Aloha Cupcakes. Today we're working with the Mack 169 lettering quills, and we're going to try something a little... this camera's fun. Anyways, I'm going to have fun with this. Stick around. Let's see what this turns out to be. These seem like really nice brushes, and I am pretty sure I can make them work pretty well for me. So this set that I have, it's a 4 set. It's a set of 4. It comes with a size 8, 6, 4, and a 2. And most of the time I use the 6 for this one just because that's the one that seemed to fit for me. Now it is blue squirrel hair. So it's a little bit softer, but it still has a good amount of snap to it. So when I'm pulling out of a line, it will still flow. So it makes it so that you have a little bit smoother delivery when you're pulling a line. And that is a big deal for me on this one because this is lettering and it's not something that I am particularly great at. Nonetheless, I'm still following along with the guide of the Speedball book for this one. I'm trying to adhere to what it says to do the lettering versus what I think I need to do during the lettering because it's for consistency issues. And I have consistency issues, admittedly. So some of the lines that you're going to see in this thing are not all that consistent, and some of the design got kind of goofy because I got tired of wiping it off and starting over again. So there's just some issues there. But the brush, though, it's doing just fine. A few of these lines, I'm a little hesitant to just pull the entire body down and just lay it down so that I can get a thick line. That's just from years of being a pinstriper. I'm just not entirely comfortable with it because I've tried my hardest to not do that. So it's something that I just need to work a little bit more at. I was able to, after a little while of me doing it. So this is also the first run with this brush. I didn't actually do any rehearsal with it. I didn't try it beforehand. I just cleaned it and started painting this. So there was a little bit of consistency, especially in those first several letters where it was me kind of figuring out how this brush goes. Maybe a little overzealous in what I thought I had for brush control on this one, but it starts to straighten out eventually. The letter S, for example. Not just that letter S. You'll see it. Now, I do like that it flares out in a consistent manner. What I don't really like is that it flares out way more than the tip already shows you. So it took me a little while, and I had to do this a few times before I was actually comfortable with how far it flares out in the first place. So that's do some practice before you use this brush. That's all I'm really getting at with that one. Get used to where that thing flares, especially if you're going to lay it down and try to use the entire body of it. Because I didn't, and it shows. But as I got more comfortable with it, the lines were definitely more consistent coming out of it. So I'm a big fan of that. It's just you have to get really used to how the brush is going to react when you do certain things. And there were just some things I just honestly didn't even notice until I started working. And then it was like, oh, look, it did that. Okay, I got to work on that. So practice, at least with this one. Try it out a couple times. Make a mess on something first before you go actually try to use it for anything. But I will say, once you got the hang of it, this brush is consistent. It pulls really sharp turns, and I really like the way that it does that. And then when you lay it down, sorry about having to get shots of my shoulder. That's just an issue with today. There was a dog and a cat fighting in my shop at the time. So one of the tripods moved. One of them got kicked over. There's a lot of shaking and trembling in one of the camera angles, and I just had to try to sort that out. So sometimes you see my hat, sometimes you see my shoulder. That's just how that works. But this brush, I do like the consistency out of it. I also like the fact that the tip of this thing is very well manicured. So that when I go and I start a line, it already has a nice, good shape to it. So it's already pretty squared off. I don't have to do a lot of repair work for the top of the line. So I can kind of just leave it as is. I mean, I did touch them up later, but I think for the most part, if I needed to do single stroke lettering with it, this would be my preferred brush to do that with. Because I think I can work with just the way that this tip flows. So that's the thing that I'm working on. That is the thing I have to practice more on. But I think this is the right brush to do that with. Because a couple of the other ones that I've got, they don't really, they kind of flare out and they kind of spread in the middle in a weird way, which could also be a deficiency of those brushes. But when you have a set of 6 brushes and 4 of them do it, yeah. But so far with this brush, didn't do it once, didn't do that flare out thing where it splits in the middle. I'm a big fan of this one so far. Now, if you'll notice, the last S, I finally got it right. Just saying. It's one of those weird moments where I'm proud of myself for it, because the first 2, not so much. Now, using this is the number 4 gauge to do the detail work on this one. I just like the way it's similar to how I like the way that the other brush is chiseled out and it's manicured. It's the same principle, and it makes for a lot cleaner detail work when I'm adding it in there. Like, I was actually comfortable just tapping the bottoms of these lines to get that little edge cleaned up on them. And it wasn't perfect because I really didn't mark things well enough. But then I knew I was going to shade it, so it's fine, or do shadows on it. So I also use this brush for the number for this. Sorry. I also used the number 4 brush to do the shadows. Now, this is something that I've talked to a few people and I've had discussions with a few people about this, that the drop shadows should be done either before or after. And everybody seems to have their different opinions on that one. I think in my case, for this design and for just what I was trying to accomplish here, I probably was better off to do the shadows first. And that may just be consistently a thing. Like, it might just be easier to do them first. And I really have only done that a couple of times. And this is an example of where I might have been better off doing it that way, especially if I'm getting more comfortable doing the lettering itself. But when I do lettering that is done with like a scrolling brush, for example, I'm a lot more comfortable doing the shadows and the shading after the fact. But I think with these kind of brushes and the way that they flow, the more comfortable I get with them, the more I think doing the shadows before is a better option. And it seems that everybody has their own opinion on that one, and everybody has their own tactics with it. But I would say that if you're going to do this and you're where I am, where you're just starting to get comfortable doing these things, maybe do the shadows first. Because there's a couple of letters here that just didn't feel right doing them the way that I was doing them, and I think that they would look a little cleaner. Now, part of this is also that I'm only using these brushes. I'm not using any of my detail brushes. I'm not using any of the scrolling brushes. I'm trying to just use this set of brushes. And that's really just so I can review them. I think in a real circumstance, if I was actually doing this for a project for something, yeah, I'm going to use and abuse all the tools I have available to me. But for the purpose of this brush review, do the shadows beforehand. It's going to be a little bit easier. Though, I have to admit, this brush, because of this clarity and because it is precise like this, it did a great job. Like, even with my inabilities and ineptitudes, it still did exactly what I wanted it to do. So, big fan of that concept. I just like the way that these are cultivated or manicured. I think that's the word I used earlier. That's what I'm going to go with. I don't actually know what the correct terminology for it is. Now, I could have ended the video right then and there. But there is this bit that I want to talk about on this one, because this, and I think you can start to see it right about here. At about this point, the brush starts to curl. Like it's starting to have a curled tip to it, and it kind of got to be a bit of an annoyance. Now, I did give it a bath at a couple different points, and I really cleaned it out before I tried doing anything else with it. And then even after I'd cleaned it, I started having that again. So my solution was that I reloaded my paint and I mixed fresh paint again, because that seemed to be the only thing that was left after I'd cleaned and scrubbed the brush again. But once I had fresh paint and I had completely scrubbed out the brush again, it still had a little bit of a curl to it. And I don't, since this happened, I gave it a nice long bath in oil and just let it do its thing. And the brush is fine now. So there might have been something else that was in there, like from the size or something, that I might not have gotten out completely before I'd done this. But I would suggest with these brushes, give them a little bit of time, give them an oil bath, and you're going to have to finesse them a little bit. So there is a bit of a breaking in period, I would say. So that way you know about the tolerance, about how far it's going to go before you have to wash it out. And I don't know if that's something that's going to be consistent. I have tested it a couple of times. This is the first run with these brushes, and I have not. No, I've done one run since, and it's still, now that it's been through some conditioning on my end, it hasn't happened again. But if I wasn't aware of how to handle a brush when it does something like that, that could have been a deal breaker for me. So it's something to be aware about, and it's something to think about and think through. Just make sure that you clean out your brushes and condition them. These are natural hair brushes, after all. Now this one, the number 2. Okay, I get it. It's still a lettering brush, but I could not for the life of me pull a thin line with this one. And I ended up outlining, I think, 2 letters with it before I just said this is not going to work for what I'm trying to do. It's not going to get as thin as I would like. And I think I ended up switching over to one of the scrolling brushes to finish it out there. That I used a detail brush to finish it from there. And now all of a sudden, the lines are going exactly how I want them to. So it wasn't like my hand wasn't the problem. It's just I didn't like the brush for this purpose. So, I mean, the quill itself worked just fine, or the lettering brush worked just fine, but for detail work, I still tend to lean on an actual detailing brush. So these were the 169s. These were a lot of fun. Still not 100% comfortable with it, but I definitely like these a lot more than some of the other ones I've tried. But I would also like to remind you, stay moist, my friends.